to open the debate.
Speaker. And may I start by thanking the many colleagues attending today's debate and the Backbench Business Committee for granting time for it. To help signpost colleagues, I hope to speak for no more than 20 minutes. MPs have effectively challenged successive governments over the years to increase engagement on freedom of religion or belief, or FORB as I shall term it, and indeed on FORB for all, whatever one's religion, or indeed if one has no religion at all. Parliamentarians have raised the importance of the recognition of FORB as a UK human rights concern. And it's only as I've been working internationally on this subject since my appointment last December as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief that I have come to understand in the international context the importance that our parliamentarians play and have played over many years in their cross-party commitment to this subject. In this, we are showing global leadership. I was told by those arranging a conference on FORB in another not-so-small country that they struggled to get just 3 elected representatives to speak on a panel about it. But our all-party group, under its tireless leadership in the Commons of the Honourable Member for Strangford, is one of the most active and largest APPGs, with now 143 members. One of the key elements, and there are 3 on the FCDO website, of my mandate as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy is, and I quote, to bring together UK efforts to promote religious tolerance abroad. And so it's absolutely right that I engage in this role with the APPG, although I am also a Vice Chair. And I want to thank its stakeholders who facilitated the appointment of a strong, indeed recently strengthened group of staff to support the APPG. And just yesterday, together, we hosted an event here in Parliament attended by very many MPs, and I do want to thank them all, not least the COP26 President and Cabinet Minister, the Right Honourable Member for Reading West, for attending. It was an event to mark Red Wednesday, the day dedicated to shining a light on the persecution of Christians across the world and standing up for the faith and freedom of all. A day when we light up public buildings like the FCDO Red, to remember in particular those who've made the ultimate sacrifice for their beliefs. And this year, for the first time, I understand Lambeth Palace was lit up. I thank the Archbishop of Canterbury for that and for his concern for FORB. Yesterday, we heard in person from victims of FORB abuses, of the suffering of the Hazaras in Afghanistan, of the widespread persecution of the Baha'is. And as today also marks the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, we were reminded of the double jeopardy many women face across the world, persecuted and discriminated against as a result of their faith and their gender, which was articulated so harrowingly in the report published yesterday by Aid to the Church in Need, entitled Hear Their Cries. Indeed, after reading that report myself, I had to simply sit down and cry. I'll certainly give way.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm a huge admirer of my Right Honourable friend and the work that she does in this field. I'm actually trying to help a Hazara Afghan woman who successfully got abroad into Pakistan undocumented, but who even now has to remain in hiding lest our Pakistani friends and allies, in inverted commas, discover her and send her back to the tender mercies of the Taliban. Isn't this a good illustration of what she's talking about?
Very much so. And if the Honourable Member would like to give me more details, I will certainly pass them on appropriately. Through the APPG and inspired by my now appointed by the Prime Minister Deputy Special Envoy David Burrows, whom I thank for his wise and unstinting work on FORB over many years, we've initiated this year a Prisoners of Conscience programme, which enables those across the world imprisoned simply on account of what they believe to be virtually adopted by an individual MP who commits to advocating on their behalf ongoing. The aim is, with the prisoners' full agreement, to highlight their cases, as well as the situation of all who are unjustly imprisoned as a result of their faith or belief. I invite colleagues to offer to partner. Please contact the APPG. And through my parliamentary office, I'm also launching a campaign titled End the Persecution. I invite all parliamentary colleagues to contact my office for the toolkit which will be available for MPs to use in constituencies to hold meetings and raise awareness amongst the wider public of the egregious infringements of FORB across the world, of which so often the public still is unaware, and so that they in turn can become ambassadors. In particular, we want to encourage the next generation to champion FORB, and that's why the End the Persecution campaign will have a focus on creating young ambassadors for FORB. And two, with regard to the work in my parliamentary office, as distinct from my work with the FCDO, which I will mention later, my role does, of course, however, very much straddle three legs of a stool: Parliament, the public, working with civil society and NGO engagement, and working with FCDO. But with regard, for a moment still, my parliamentary office, we've conducted intensive deep dives into countries over the past few months, into countries where violations of FORB are egregious or of key concern. In effect, these have been virtual visits for me, whilst in-person visits have, of course, been impractical due to the pandemic for much of this year. We focused on a number of countries, speaking to dozens of witnesses who provided us with first-hand evidence of the state and concerns about FORB in their countries. And these have provided invaluable feedback to the FCDO. These deep dives have helped informed advocacy, and recognising this, I'm pleased that some FCDO desk officers have started to observe our deep dives. We learnt of personal experiences from those on the ground in Nigeria, Myanmar, Eritrea and Afghanistan, where we've conducted deep dives. Can I just briefly present some of the shocking things that have been shared? In Nigeria, marginalisation and persecution of religious minorities has in many areas become institutionalised, from girls being forcibly married and converted to people denied gaining public office because of their faith. In Myanmar, human rights organisations report that since the military coup and pandemic, those experiencing persecution due to their original belief have been increasingly targeted, denied access to key services, and occasionally forced into unjust arrest, where they are tortured horrifically. In Eritrea, those arrested are reportedly held in makeshift detentions. Many prisoners are held in shipping containers where they can be at risk of being burnt to death in the heat of the day and then frozen at night. Many go mad with the suffering. Others are held in literally holes in the ground. Upwards of up to 20,000 people held within camps, many beaten, including pregnant women beaten around the womb. And in Afghanistan, we spoke directly with members of several religious communities, including Christians, Sikhs, Muslims, Hazaras, and the NGOs supporting them. Those that do not submit to the beliefs of the Taliban are frequently at risk of their lives. Some indeed have lost them. We heard of some 1,000 Hazaras thrown out of their homes, wandering the countryside, a dozen or so found by others beheaded at the roadside. Relocation and resettlement schemes urgently need to include religious minorities. And as we've just heard earlier from my colleague, refugees who fled to neighbouring countries continue to be vulnerable. I turn now to the Truro Review. The second part of my published mandate is to support implementation of the Bishop of Truro's recommendations to the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office support for persecuted Christians around the world. And I should say that, of course, this work does improve work not just for persecuted Christians, but for the FCDO work for all those who are persecuted around the world, whatever their faiths or none. I want to thank my right honourable friend, the member for South West Surrey, the former Foreign Secretary, for initiating this review, and the Bishop of Truro's continued strong commitment for FORB. Both of them have been of great support to me in my role. To oversee the implementation of the review, I hold regular meetings with officials, and indeed with the Bishop, to ensure that the 22 recommendations will be implemented in full, both in word and spirit, by the deadline of early next July. And I'm pleased that the FCDO indicate that delivery of over half of the recommendations are making good progress, and that we are on track that delivery of over half has occurred and that we are on good progress with the remainder and that we're on track to deliver all by July 2022, in line with our manifesto commitment. Let me highlight a few. Recommendation 6. The last time we debated FORB in this place, there was concern expressed by a number of colleagues cross-party as to the support for my own role, and indeed Recommendation 6 does indicate that there should be suitable instruments and roles to monitor and implement the approach to Truro, establishing permanently and in perpetuity the role of the Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief, with appropriate resources and authority to work across FCDO departments, supported by a Director General level champion for FORB. Now, I'm pleased to report to the House that since those concerns were expressed, there has been significant movement to provide more dedicated official support for my role, not least by the appointment of our former colleague David Burrows as Deputy Special Envoy. And together we can press on to ensure that we make most of the opportunities of the next 8 months to build on Truro progress. Regarding Recommendation 2, this year FORB was included in the G7 communiqué for the first time, laying the foundations for further collaborations within this group. Recommendation 8, the Global Human Rights Sanction Regime. In March, the Foreign Secretary announced sanctions alongside the US, Canada and the EU against perpetrators of gross human rights violations against Uyghurs and other minorities in Xinjiang. I look forward to further sanctions specifically targeted at individuals who violate FORB. This is much needed. Recommendation 20. We've used our position at the UN Security Council to raise awareness on persecution of religious minorities in conflict, and Lord Ahmed hosted a successful ARIA meeting in the margins of the Security Council in March. Recommendation 14. Freedom of religion or belief is a key theme of the annual Human Rights and Democracy reports and will continue to be so in future. I would like to see greater integration of FORB with the reports on other human rights, as they are, of course, so interrelated. I think, for example, of the rights to associate, freedom of speech, and of course other rights such as media freedoms. Recommendation 11, religion training. With Lord Ahmed, I launched the core training unit on religion for international engagement earlier this year, recommended for all FCDO staff, in particular essential for FCDO officials in relevant diplomatic posts. This is so that, of course, they can engage more informally with religious communities in the countries where they serve. During the course of 2021, I wrote to every UK diplomatic post across the world, almost 200, asking about our diplomatic engagements on FORB in the countries where they serve. And I was greatly encouraged by the clear increased understanding of and interest in engagement on FORB by our embassy staff. There's more to do, but there's no doubt that since the publication of Truro in 2019, this engagement by our diplomatic staff has markedly increased. Having said that, of course, there's always more that we can do, and it's very important that the religious training modules don't remain on a shelf, or perhaps more accurately today, I should say, don't remain through a portal which is not accessed by FCDO officials, but is actually accessed and its understanding embedded in FCDO thinking. There is still a way to go before this, before FORB is at the heart of FCDO thinking in the way that other rights are, and that was evidenced by the FCDO Outcome Delivery Plan of 2021-22 published July, when FORB received slight, some may say scant, reference. I'm pleased, however, that on discussing this with our new Foreign Secretary, who took post after that date, that she has a personal support for FORB and has indicated to me that that document does